welcome back to another one of Mr. Lang's virtual classrooms. Today we're taking a look at the French and Indian War. As you can see here, it lasts from 1756 to 1763, and realistically it actually is a smaller war within a bigger war going on in the world, and we're going to talk about that. It's the Great War for Empire, as it's often referred to as. So think about this as we go through the lesson today. Was 1763 a turning point in British colonial relationships? We're going to see that the colonies that we talked about before are kind of starting to outgrow a certain king in a certain country called Great Britain. What'll happen next? Who knows? So what does North America look like in 1750? Well, you're going to see that, there's a couple different countries here. We have Russia, we got Spain, we got France, we got Britain, all vying for North America or parts of it. And what's most interesting is when you take a look at disputed colonies, right? There it is, right there. Disputed land between Louisiana and the British colonies. Oh, whose land is that? I don't know. Alright, so the causes of the French and Indian War. Well, there's a few. Study the map. Think, what could one of those causes actually be? I'll wait. Oh, you ready? Alright, so what is it? You got it. It's that disputed land between France and Britain. Look at that, huh? They don't really know whose land that is. They both are claiming it, so that's going to be a problem. You can't both claim the same land. Just can't do that. So in 1754, we have that clash in the Ohio River Valley. And what happens is, of course, the British and the French clash. And they clash because at Fort Necessity, really is the big one, they sent out a very young George Washington, yes, of the Virginia militia, to go ahead and basically tell the French to get off that land that's not theirs. And they say, nah, we're good. And because it all went down so fast, so bad, poor George Washington here does become engrossed in the Battle of Fort Necessity. And unfortunately, he doesn't do so well. The French have set up forts along that disputed colonies there, disputed land, to protect their fur trading interests. And some of these forts were very much in conflict with those English claims, supposedly. So when Governor Dinwiddie, yes, that was his name, dispatched a very young George Washington out there in 1753 to deliver the protest to the French in person, he was ignored. Yet this is his debut on what will be an incredible career. The British are going to send a party to construct a fort right on the site, very hardly southeast of modern-day Pittsburgh. And the battle ensues. Again, this is a great recreation that's actually at Mount Vernon, which is George Washington's house. It's an awesome model if you ever get to go there. Again, I was able to go there and take the pictures that you see here. So the force was actually driven off by the French, who in return construct Fort Duquesne by that site. His gunpowder was soaked. The Native Americans and the French fought through guerrilla warfare tactics. Now think about this. When we talk about the American Revolution, that's what George Washington used. That's what the colonists used, were guerrilla warfare tactics. This was the first time that George Washington is really exposed to those tactics. It's pretty incredible. Really is the prelude. This whole incident was a prelude into the French and Indian War. So in 1754, Ben Franklin, who's now becoming this huge politician at the time, is going to get representatives from New England, New York, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and meet in Albany, New York. What's actually happening here, as you can see, it's the first time we see this very famous political cartoon, Join or Die, where we see the different parts of the snake represent the colonies, again separated, but they need to be together. And that was Ben Franklin's message, is that they need to be together. So in 1756, war is formally declared. The spread of war is insane, because the French and Indian War really, like I said, is a smaller war within a larger war. This becomes known as the 7 Years' War, as it lasts around 7 years. But really, it starts here in the colonies and spreads as you'll see right here. Okay, so right there, that's where it starts, right there. And there you go. It's gonna spread everywhere. Oh my gosh! Ah! Ah! And again, that's how, again, this literally spread across the world. But we're gonna look at the British-American colonial tensions, because there are quite a bit. Again, first off, the methods of fighting were very different. Colonials knew the land, and so they are going to adopt that Indian-style guerrilla warfare tactics, those Native American tactics. British are going to still march in formation, and that's going to be part of their downfall. We're going to have military organizations a little different. You have colonial militias serving under their own captains, and the British officers are going to want to take charge of the colonials. They think they're above the colonials, yet here they are in their land, right? Military discipline's completely different. Again, there's really no, military deference or protocols observed or anything like that with the colonists. They're kind of just going by the seat of their pants, as they say. They're just kind of acting as they go. Versus, again, British are very drilled, very tough, very disciplined, and of course is very different. So you can already see the opposites here. It's already going to be tensions here. First off, finances. Well, it's a little different perspective here. Colonists think, hey, well, we don't want to be taxed, and of course the British are like, you should pay because this is your war. We're fighting it in your land. So of course, it definitely is something where butting heads is obviously it's inevitable. Even their demeanor. I mean, colonists are going to be casual, non-professional, and yet here we have British officers with servants and tea. However, what is important is that the French were winning so much. Oh my goodness. Again, the British were getting the L there. And of course, it really starts to turn around with this guy, William Pitt. William Pitt is actually going to be the foreign minister for England. He understands the colonials' concerns. He offered them a compromise. In fact, he said, give us military cooperation, give us colonial loyalty, and we would reimburse the colonial assemblies for their costs. So, as I said before, this is really a smaller war within a bigger war, and the 7 Years' War is happening in Europe during this entire time. Now, the French and Indian War is essentially going to be really the catalyst in this whole thing. Britain and Prussia are going to fight against the alliance of France, Austria, Saxony, Russia, Sweden, Spain. Again, they've got quite a war here. And it really is Prime Minister William Pitt that goes ahead and provides supplies to Prussia to fight in Europe and to basically have that commitment to British troops and resources to winning the war against the French in North America. William Pitt really is the star here. He goes ahead, and because of what he did, he's going to go and win this war for the British here in North America. Now, the European phase of the war lasts, again, from 1757 to 1763. We're going to see the tide starts to turn during that time. In 1758 to 1761, the tide turns in favor for England. Really, in 1757, this expansion advocate, William Pitt, who there you see him right there, is going to become the British Prime Minister and going to vow to lead the country to victory, in which he does. Pitt concentrated on expelling the French from North America, which he's going to sort of succeed at. We'll talk about that. Buying the cooperation of the colonists by stimulating the North American economy with a massive infusion of British currency, which was actually a good thing. Think about it. Again, he's essentially pumping more money into the colonies so they can prosper. And of course, buying the support of Native Americans with promises of fixed territorial boundaries, saying, look, if you help us out, we're going to draw a line. British colonists are on this side. Native Americans, you get everything over here. How about that? And we're going to see that does happen, but it doesn't get implemented well. So, again, as the tide turns for England, you can see at around 1761, Spain had become an ally of France. You can see the different claims that have started to occur there. So after most wars, there is a peace treaty signed. And here in 1763, when the war ends, there is the Treaty of Paris. France is going to really be the loser here. France is going to lose her Canadian possessions, most of her empire in India, as well as any claims east of the Mississippi River. Spain, on the other hand, is going to get land on the west of the Mississippi River, including New Orleans. And England, the clear winner here, goes ahead and gets all the French lands in Canada exclusive rights to Caribbean slave trade, and of course commercial dominance in India, which we see is going to be a huge issue for England later on. Again, England's the clear winner here by far. So North America in 1763 looks a lot different, as you can see. Wow, no more disputed land, huh? What are the odds of that? You have, again, New Spain, again, where Spain took over Louisiana. Now, Louisiana will go back to the French before we do take it, but again, we'll talk about that later on. Again, Canada is part of the British Empire. And notice we have this proclamation line of 1763. This line right here, proclamation line of 1763, is that line where, again, Britain said, hey, Native Americans, again, you keep on that side, our colonists are going to keep on this side. Unfortunately, the colonists are just that. They're frontiersmen who want to go out and say that should be all of our land. And they are going to want to break that line. After the American Revolution, that line will go away. So what are the effects of the war on Britain? Well, first, it increased her colonial empire in the Americas. That was huge. Remember, the more land you have, the bigger empire you are, the more respect that these countries felt then. It greatly enlarged England's debt. This is huge because England is going to... William Pitt had a great idea. Like, let's pump some money into this. Let's help the economy of the colonists. Let's help them win this war. Let's help us win this whole war. And England went into crazy debt afterwards. And this is where we start to see that England starts to tax the colonists and tax the people at home in Britain. In fact, the people in England, in Great Britain, they actually went ahead and were taxed more than the colonists. So Britain's contempt for the colonials are going to create very bitter feelings, especially because, again, they were button heads during this entire war. And therefore, England felt that they needed a major reorganization of their American empire. And of course, we're going to see that we don't want to be reorganized. So what's the effect on the colonials? Well, first, it's going to unite them against a common enemy for the first time. Really, we look at the Albany, we look at the Albany plan, and we see that, snake that's chopped up. We need to join or die. These colonies essentially were working as 13 separate colonies that really weren't united in any way. Now we see that they were united under a common enemy, and that's huge. It's going to create a socializing experience for all the colonials who participated, as now they felt like they're, essentially grown up, and that they've socialized with other colonies as well, which is going to be a big deal. And it's going to create very bitter feelings toward the British that would only intensify throughout the years. So colonists aren't going to be happy with everything that's going on, and so of course, for the first time, many colonists are going to start to call people who join this non-importation movement, people who didn't want to pay taxes, patriots. And of course, we all know what's next. And that'll be our next virtual classroom. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you guys back in the classroom.